35. 2020 Vision on Agriculture. Remembering Vision 2020. In 2002, the then Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Patrick Manhead, appointed a multi-sectoral group, MSG, to lead the development of the Vision 2020 planning exercise. This group was mandated to guide the entire planning process, leading to the formulation of a strategic development plan for achieving developed country status by 2020. Following the establishment of the multi-sectoral core group, 28 subcommittees were created, each charged with reviewing the status of a particular sector, engaging in broad-based consultations, and formulating a development plan for the sector. The agricultural sector was the responsibility of one of these subcommittees. As things would turn out, my neighbor, who was on the faculty of the Institute of Business, IOB, found out in conversation that the manager of the agricultural sector review plan was having difficulty finding someone to peer review the framework for action coming out of the subcommittee report. This was because most of the agricultural professionals were themselves involved in writing the report. He told her that his neighbor had been involved in agriculture in Trinidad for 20 years and should be able to help. Subsequently, I received an offer from the IOB General Manager inviting me to conduct this review. I'm not sure what was expected, but she mentioned to me they had not anticipated receiving a 30-page review that essentially eclipsed the entire content of the original report. It was clear that I was not the right person to be asked to review this subcommittee's work when the report was required to be submitted in a matter of weeks. I was doing a Paulo Freire on them, rewriting the subsector plans. No one ever contacted me with respect to my review. I had thought ahead of time that if these professionals did not know what to do with my comprehensive review, they would simply decide to ignore it. So I decided to rewrite the entire document. More importantly, this assignment offered me the unique opportunity to examine whether my thinking was really that much different from that of the established academic community in Trinidad and Tobago. In other words, how far do we see and how clear? The purpose of this subcommittee report and the subsequent National Strategic Development Plan was supposed to be a call for action. In the case of the agricultural sector report, the authors, whom I suppose the PM thought would be the best brains in the country on agriculture, were more steeped in their reverence for institutions than for action. Persons who create wealth in the agricultural sector were obviously absent from this process. These were such actors as farmers, agricultural workers, input suppliers, marketing agents, credit officers, NGOs, etc. Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Marine Resources is not an actor who directly creates wealth in this sector. Yet in this report, 6 of its 10 action components had leading recommendations which suggested more government institutional structures such as autonomous institutions, interministerial interagency committees, advisory councils, national physical plans, zoning, master plan for drainage, flood protection, access roads, human resource development. What was this all about? The report read as if its intention was to create strategic space for the ministry and the authors, but not for the real actors in the sector. They also had reasons to question some of their basic assumptions. For instance, do we really share a common point of departure in respect to what developed status really meant? They were simply trying to set objectives in respect to the economic statistics of some of the developed world countries. The obvious common point of departure in the purpose of the 2020 vision exercise was, what does achieving developed country status imply? We know that it could not mean a linear growth in our productive systems, because the phrase was in reference to other countries called developed. When we succeed in changing our status, other states will also change in relationship to us. So, were we expected to join that group of developed countries in the world by 2020? Vision and horizon. Not only was the comparison logic faulty, but the data suggested that achieving developed country status was not even feasible in terms of the use of the world's natural resources. In my own circle of knowledge, I was aware of a 1999 exercise called ecological accounting that showed that if all the countries in the world utilized natural resources in a manner commensurate with that of the USA, a model of a developed country, we would need precisely 5.1 planets to sustain that pattern. In fact, the same analysis suggested that if the world were to adopt the pattern of resource use current in Trinidad and Tobago, we would alternately need about 1.8 planets to sustain even that lower status. So what exactly were we targeting? During my commission in CISP, IUCN, we usually identified what we called mature societies, and this was more in terms of soft parameters. Our vision of a mature society included, among other things, one in which the institutional structures for change enjoyed a widespread sense of legitimacy, not legality. The respect for collective rules helped to focus group action, and internal socio-political structures were surely complex, but they remained vibrant. You can start to see where I was coming from. Take, for instance, the idea of zoning regulations. Zoning is a very effective tool in the USA and Europe because such regulations enjoy both legitimacy and respect. In Trinidad and Tobago, such regulations, while enjoying the full posture of legality, would have their legitimacy constantly undermined by a low level of respect for collective rules and by the pervasiveness of personal strategies and alliances to get around these rules. The more I delved into the findings of this learned group of intellectuals, the more I realized that we must have been living on different planets. While we all would agree that no magic solution will make the vision a reality, maybe we can adopt a common point of departure that states that our collage of solutions must at least enjoy legitimacy, respect, acceptance, and vibrancy. Working in a quantum world, I had been trained not to treat individual components of a development plan as an indefatigable gauge of progress. Lest we forget that the world is more quantum than mechanical. The simplest way to do national sector planning is to assume that the world is mechanical. In the mechanical world, we can be satisfied that once the components are in place, we can feel assured of a high probability of achieving our goals. This is a good vision in the mechanical world, but not an achievable horizon in the quantum world. This is one of the lessons from those sleepless nights spent in figuring out Pontryagin's maximum principle for my PhD candidacy. We have to deal with interconnectivity, interdependence, and entanglements that are created when physical and social components clash. In each step that you take, you must consider how to overcome the many entanglements that will ripple through everything else in the world before you can calculate the probability of success. You say that you want to achieve developed country status. You are immediately globalizing an exercise of national economic planning with implications for the issues of universal competitiveness and sustainability. To give them credit, the 2020 visionists had made competitiveness a big issue, but the competitiveness theme had some serious contradictions within it. The economist Luba Zarsky had discussed how global economic integration could cause social and economic policies to become stuck in the mud, so to speak. She observed that sometimes we can find ourselves unwilling to impose on our local production system costs that are associated with social and environmental conditions. Thus, we may become overcommitted to maintaining our competitive position while settling for an ever-degrading environment. This is really a race to the bottom in long-term environmental standards. To me, the prudent position would be to push sustainability as a primary challenge, with competitiveness being right next in line. Differences in 2020 vision approach. Their approach touched on all sorts of issues that I had been struggling to resolve at a lower level of enterprise organization for over 25 years. It commented on issues of food security, research, technology, development and extension, water resources, land resources, planning, and governance structures. When it came to the issue of rural access roads, I felt that it fell short. The major problem with the administration of access roads was not the roads themselves. Rather, it was the value of the service provided by the roads. Generally, when we assessed the feasibility of an access road in 1992, we sought to evaluate the value of production within the zone of influence of the road. That is, any farm activity within 30 meters on either side of the road. Benefits of such an investment were presumed to be the reduction in transportation costs to the farmer, the increase in the wealth-creating options presented to the farmer, and the subsequent increase in the value of produce reaching the market. Systematically collecting such data on the weekly basis would reflect the value of the produce brought to the market by farmers using the road. Such detailed information not only provided us with a production profile being serviced by the road, but also a basis for deciding priorities, aligning road investment with other infrastructural activities such as drainage and irrigation, as well as a focal objective for any further coordination among agencies. In other words, the interagency coordination needed is not with respect to the roles and responsibilities for the roads, as they implied, but rather in respect to the potential returns defined by the zone of influence of the access road. In the quantum world, it is not what the components alone can do that matters. It is how the interchange among these components can collectively create a new reality. There were other gaps in the planning process as visualized by the 2020 vision experts. They seemed unfamiliar with local area concept plans, which would be an instrument to synchronize the physical plans of the regional corporations with a national physical plan designed to achieve some goals in 2020. I ended up providing plan profiles for all 14 regional corporations in Trinidad and Tobago. I also remarked on each of the many action plans under their 10 sector goals. Why was there such a gap in our understanding? Well, we had far different life experiences to date. The only reason I was able to speak to all these aspects was because I had just completed coordinating the most comprehensive exercise on land use planning in Trinidad and Tobago. I had information on survey technologies, environmental rules for Tobago, specific interests embedded in the physical domain of the regional corporations. For instance, the councillors of the Salmon-Laventille Regional Corporation were not aware that in addition to their urban constituents and manufacturing locations, they were also responsible for a significant portion of our tourism coastal zone, Maracas Bay, as well as our natural wetlands, the Caroni Swamp. These two physical structures all fell within their geopolitical domain as defined by the Regional Corporation Act. Could we build some bridges to salvage this component of the crucial 2020 plan? Maybe, but then there was a built-in arrogance in academia and even in the civil service community that sometimes fail to recognize that they are not the only repositories of knowledge of the affairs of state and people in the Caribbean.